This morning, we're going to hear from a woman who's making shocking allegations against Ghislaine Maxwell. In her new book, Silence No More, Surviving My Journey to Hell and Back, Sarah Ransome says she was recruited into Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring back in 2006. Maxwell, as you know, is currently on trial. She's charged with recruiting and grooming underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, she denies all the charges, and Ransome's claims are not part of this case against her. Ransome, who is now 37 years old, was in court for the first day of the trial last week. She settled a civil lawsuit with Maxwell back in 2018. We'll hear directly from her in just a moment. But first, here's a look at some of her story and those very disturbing allegations against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein.
What does today mean for you all?
Sarah Ransome says she was recruited into Jeffrey Epstein's world when she was 22. In her book, Ransome says she was approached at a New York City nightclub by a girl about her age who offered to introduce her to Jeffrey Epstein, saying he helps a lot of young girls achieve their dreams. Days later, Ransome went to Epstein's private island in the Caribbean with other young girls, including her recruiter and Ghislaine Maxwell. The abuse, she says, started on that island where Epstein raped her.
I'm here representing civil society.
It was Maxwell, she says, who often called her to Epstein's room. She writes, while Jeffrey was reeling in children by the dozens, Ghislaine was shoring up his social credibility. Epstein, she says, promised to help her get into a prestigious fashion school with a caveat. She had to lose 30 pounds off of her 5'9" frame. She writes, you'll need to get down to 114 pounds. Instructions, she says, came from Ghislaine Maxwell. Like many of Maxwell and Epstein's accusers, Ransome's trouble started long before she met the pair in 2006.
I had no idea the lines then that I was actually getting into.
Ransome was born and raised in South Africa by a single mother. She was raped for the first time at the age of 11, she says, by her mother's boyfriend. Years before she met Epstein and Maxwell, Ransome says she turned to sex work to stave off homelessness. When she escaped Epstein in 2007, she turned to sex work again, something she deeply regrets, and writes in her book, I've made regretful choices in the name of survival and acted at times in breathless desperation. I am not perfect, and that is the point. Now, we spoke to Sarah Ransome ahead of the release of her book. She told us why she was afraid to speak out for so long. Sarah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me here.
I know, I can't imagine how you're feeling. We've just looked at a piece about your life. As we sit here today, Ghislaine Maxwell's trial is underway. The Ghislaine that you write about in your book and the Ghislaine that the defense has laid out on the very first day, we're being told that she's being used as a scapegoat, that she was not involved in any of the sex trafficking. What do you think when you hear that?
It makes me sick. I remember very distinctly before I'd been on Jeffrey Epstein's island for a few days with some other survivors who had been raped, as well as I had been raped. And just before Ghislaine arrived, Jeffrey very, very clearly said to me, you answer to Ghislaine, you do exactly what she says, and you don't cross her. Bearing in mind, from the first time I'd been on the island, Jeffrey said to me, I will kill you, I will kill your parents if you ever run, if you ever tell anybody, or if you ever go to the authorities.
Do you ever tell anybody what?
About the rapes and about what he was doing to me. So I was already frightened. I was terrified for my life. So when Jeffrey said to me, you do not cross her, I knew, you do not cross her. I have so many examples of how Ghislaine not only tortured me and abused me, but other survivors. When Ghislaine had been on the island, I'd been on the island for a few days, and Jeffrey had like this outside patio with seating, and she looked at me and she walked over to me and she said, Jeffrey wants you. And I completely froze. And she grabbed my arm and marched me into Jeffrey's room where I was then raped. So when she says that she had nothing to do and she had no idea, she was a facilitator. She was Jeffrey's right-hand woman. She orchestrated everything.
The thing about your book that fascinates me is your very first line. You said, "I never planned to tell the story. When I fled hell, you call it, I made a pact with myself. No one would hear the details of what happened to me in those grievous 9 months of my life. Not my parents, not my brother. Yet you've written a book because you want us now to know the story. Why?"
I feel you're only as sick as your secrets. I was tired of being afraid. I was tired of living in fear. I got to a stage where I needed people to know my story because I don't ever want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. And when I first came forward, I was victim shamed. I was trolled. I was told, you were 22, you deserve to be raped. Now,
You're a gold digger.
I'm a gold digger.
You were in it for the money.
I was in it for the money, and you know, and that really triggered an anger in me that I didn't even know existed, like a fire. And
What is the reality of that?
the reality of that is the victim shaming. Survivors don't come forward because they're afraid to be judged. They are afraid that they won't be believed because they have made certain bad decisions in their life. But I did not deserve to be raped. Because of my bad decisions, I'm not a free-for-all where any person has the right to just rape me whenever they want. Rape is rape.
Ghislaine supporters, by that I mean her family has certainly spoken very adamantly on her behalf, say because Jeffrey isn't here, survivors like yourself just want to punish Ghislaine for Jeffrey's misdeeds.
But that's nonsense, and it really, really infuriates me when people say that. I was forced into Jeffrey's room to be raped by Ghislaine. Ghislaine is as responsible, if not more, than Jeffrey.
What would justice look like for you as you sit here today?
Jeffrey's dead, Ghislaine's here. I want Ghislaine behind bars for the rest of her life, purely because she is that sick. The public are not safe with her on the street. I want people to know what happened. And me being and speaking and living my truth has set me free. It's set me free.
Now, of course, we reached out to Ghislaine Maxwell for comment, but she did not respond to us. Maxwell has pleaded not guilty and firmly denies any wrongdoing. You know, it was interesting talking to Sarah Ransome because CBS has done interviews with her over the years, and she says writing this book has been an incredible healing journey for her. And the most powerful words that any survivor can hear at this point are, "I believe you." And she is getting a lot of that. She feels vindicated, she feels validated, and she certainly feels gratified by the support that she's getting. And to see Ghislaine paint the picture of her role just drives her nuts up, to be very candid about it.
It's
a lot to
remarkable.
say.
I still am absorbing the number of people who have been affected, allegedly, by these two, and perhaps we'll never know the true number, but there are people who do know.
Right.
That's the thing that is out there, and it happened for so long. People know what went down.
Yeah, she said something powerful. You're only as sick as your secrets. And for her to come out, it serves as a roadmap, as a GPS for young men and women who are trying to navigate through what can be a shark-infested society with predators preying on young people.
And that's what she's hoping, Nate, that because it was so egregious what happened to her, that she didn't want to talk about it for so long, that she hopes other people will speak up, not necessarily about this case, but other things that have happened to you. Don't stay silent when you know that you're being abused.
And your words will help those that are going through the same thing.